Hello and a warm welcome to the Racing Postcast, brought to you by the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. We've got some cracking action coming this weekend. Last weekend, due to abandonments, it wasn't quite up to scratch, but this weekend we've got 3 tracks we're going to be covering: Kempton, Warwick and Wetherby. Grade 2 action from all 3 tracks. And we've also got some really competitive handicaps. We've got the Pertemps Handicap Hurdle, we've got the Lanzarote Handicap Hurdle, along with the Classic Chase and the Unibet rearranged Veterans Handicap Chase from Warwick. So really looking forward to covering that alongside my panel today. Joining me is betting editor Keith Melrose. We've got Irish handicapper Jonny Pearson, and from Unibet, a new face this week. No Ed Nicholson, but Brett Williams joining us. Brett, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Sam. Yeah, looking forward to looking ahead to this weekend's action. As you said, there really is something for everyone. Great news, of course, that we can restage the Unibet Veterans Chase to Warwick, transferred from Sandown. It's got pretty chilly, hasn't it, over the last few days? And I think we were worried that it was all going to be sort of frosted off, but there are no inspections planned. And I think the grind at Kempton is going to be sort of on the good side. So, no, looking forward to a cracking day's action.
Absolutely, fingers crossed we get some good racing this weekend. And we're going to start off in our first part at Warwick, and we kick off with the 149 there, which is the Pertemps Network Handicap Hurdle. This over 3 mile, 1 furlong. It's obviously a qualifier for the final at Cheltenham in a couple of months' time. The betting with Unibet currently looks like this: Mel Monroe's 5-2, Kintara 11-4, Martha Bray is 5-1, Third Wind and J'ai Foi, along with Shallow River, all 17-2, Gentleman at Arms 11-1, and the big breakaway, the outside of the lot, at 14-1. And Brett, we start off the show with an offer here. This is our money back as cash if second or third race. Is that right?
Yeah, so just the 8 runners going to post for this, which is actually sort of quite a small field for this qualifier. But yes, if you do back the second or the third, we of course will be giving you your money back as cash. And of course, this race used to be, you have to sort of finish in the first 6 just to get yourself nicely qualified for the final at the festival. Now, of course, you've got to finish in the first 4. So, we're going to see a good finish for this. Mal Monroe, as you said, is the one that just about tops the market at the minute. I think stepping up in trip, which will definitely suit that horse, as a point-to-point winner as well. But I think Kintara is a formidable danger. Is actually unbeaten, 3 from 3 for the Phil and Mal Rowley team. Of course, had a little spell with Kim Bailey in between, but is a very progressive individual. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see sort of more sustained support come in for Kintara as they approach the off time. But as you said, yeah, Mal Monroe is your market leader at the moment, stepping up in trip, could suit, and could be a smart sort coming over from Gordon Elliott, who doesn't just come over to the UK for the sunshine.
Doesn't, absolutely. And Brett, would Kintara be your selection in the race?
I'm probably going to go with Mal Monroe, really. I think Kintara might just found wanting a little bit more, primarily because Mal Monroe is trained over in Ireland, and you should never, of course, never ignore any Irish trainers. So, yeah, Mal Monroe for me in that Pertemps qualifier.
Okay, the Gordon Elliott runner for Brett in our opener here on the Postcast. Keith Melrose, I'll come to you. First of all, how are you?
I'm well, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, keeping well. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Who do you fancy in the Pertemps qualifier here?
Well, I do a little more of the chasers, and the horse I'm putting up here is a horse before I've thought, this horse that didn't take defences before, but he's always been a really quite reliable handicap hurdler, and moreover, he has got a real affinity with his meeting. Gentleman at Arms, 2 years ago, he was second in the Leamington Novices hurdle, which is no more, but it was a Grade 2 novice hurdle on the card that produced the new one and other good horses down the years. And then the following year, he came back for the Hampton Novices Chase, which we'll cover shortly. Obviously, he didn't take defences, but the sort of that tells you about the intent of coming back here year on year. He was 4th in a race over course and distance here in the spring off this sort of mark, and he showed it in good form by winning at Aintree back there in November. So I think the run in between was just to keep him ticking over. And he's exactly the sort of bet, it's quite a competitive race, but exactly the sort of bet where I'd take advantage of that Unibet offer where you get your money back if you're second or third, because yes, maybe 1 or 2 might have a bit more if the Irish horse is as progressive as he's maybe looked. Maybe he'll have too much for him, but I can see Gentleman at Arms well outwinning his odds about double figures.
Yeah, absolutely. Double figures with Unibet currently 11-1. A big price selection here. And Jonny Pearson, we're going to see horses just sneaking in to the placings here, trying to qualify for the final march. But we don't want to hear about those horses. We want to find the winner. Who's it going to be?
I think Kintara will win this race. Also been 2 from 2 this season, and shows a likable. I don't know what word. It shows fondness for soft and heavy going, as we've seen on the last run. So the ground should pose no problems. Obviously, Mel Monroe is interesting coming over from Ireland. The form's pretty solid. Unfortunately, we had the Lawlers hurdle called off on Sunday. We would have seen Croke Park running that, which is now tomorrow. And if Croke Park goes and runs a big race on Friday, then I'd expect to see Mel Monroe shorten in the betting as a result. But I do think Kintara might be too good on this occasion.
Absolutely, yeah. Kintara, the one for Jonny Pearson. We will be discussing a bit about the Lawlers of Naas towards the end of the show. Let's go on to the 224 at Warwick. Let's see if we can get an agreed opinion here. This is the Hampton Novices Chase, a Grade 2 event over 3 miles, where Apple Away tops the market at 15 to 8. Unibet can hardly split the 3 at the top of the market. Broadway Boy 2 to 1. Grey Dawning is also 2 to 1. Then you've got the Changing Man at 11 to 1 and Carbon King at 25 to 1. Keith, I'll start with you on this one. Who's going to win this Grade 2 contest?
That's interesting. I think the market is going to look quite different near the off time. I think decisions will be made and opinions will be formed about these horses. And for me, we watched Grey Dawning. We're talking about that run again behind Ginny's Destiny at Cheltenham last time, where he took just about every fence with him. If he told me that horse was then going to run next at Warwick, you never think he was going to turn up and run his race. He made so many mistakes that day. Talent's not doubted, but Warwick's one of those tracks where they've got those 5 fences down the back. You hit one, you probably end up hitting them all. And he might struggle to do it. Whereas you've got a horse here in Broadway Boy who's just so he bounces out, he's really likeable, stays very strongly there. I think they're still intending, possibly aiming him at the 3 mile 6 race at the festival. He's just got that battle hardness. He goes out in front and is a very solid jumper for a horse of his experience. And yeah, I thought he's the one that should be favourite. I can respect Apple Away. She jumped a lot better on her second run over fences at Leicester, but she had looked very novice at Haydock, maybe not quite the same natural as Broadway Boy was. And Broadway Boy's probably got her on form anyway, even with the weight for 6'11". So it's Broadway Boy for me in this one.
Absolutely, I agree. I think Broadway Boy could take some beating in this. Jonny Pearson, who do you like in this one?
Despite what Keith has just informed us, I still do like Grey Dawning. the jumping, there are questions over the jumping, as we saw last time. And Ginny's Destiny, arguably a fortunate winner. He had incredibly back and forth, taking even more fence with him than Grey Dawning did. But I think the talent and ability is higher than any other horse in this race. And provided he does get his jumping right, I think he will be too good for the rest of them. Apple Away, done nothing wrong. But, it wasn't much of a race at Leicester, and, the jury's still out on to whether she can handle going against the opposite sex up in class here. And I just think Grey Dawning is going to be too good for the rest of them.
Right, and a sunny day at Aintree, I'm definitely back in Grey Dawning, when half the fences in it. But yeah, so I can concede that one for sure.
There we go. Look, I'm going to come to Brett now, and what I don't want to happen here is someone go for another horse in this race and go for Apple Away. Please, Brett, don't make it 3 different selections in this.
No, I'm all over Broadway Boy. I'm going to go with Keith here. So I thought, he's a very progressive chaser. He's got more experience than any of them. He's ran 4 times over the fences previously. Listening to Nigel Twiston-Davies, who doesn't say much, does he? When you hear him in various press interviews in the week. I heard him on Nick Luck's show this week, and he's quite bullish of a good run. As you said, this is probably almost on the short side for him, isn't it? He looks if he shapes like a real proper stayer. The good news is, it's quite hard to separate them at the top of the market at the minute. But from 11:30 tomorrow, we will be price boosting the favourite, whichever that will be. At the moment, Apple Away is by far the strongest of those two at the top of the market. It was around sort of 5 to 1 when we first opened betting on this. Now it's a 15 to 8. I suppose it could be quite significant as well that Lucinda Russell's running this horse here over 3 as opposed to 2-5 in the Towton at Wetherby. Read into that what you will, but just think that could be quite significant. I just think Broadway Bull will go out in front, try and make every post a winning one, and as long as he jumps well, as you said, those fences down the backside, you make a mistake and you're done. But if you could just get into a night of rhythm and I think he's well priced. I think he could be potential and a top notch over fences further down the line.
I completely agree. So it'd be 3 selections there for Broadway Boy and Jonny taking the risk with Grey Dawning in the 2:24 there at Warwick. Moving on to the 3 o'clock, which is the classic handicap chase over 3 mile 5 furlongs. Let's have a look at the betting with Unibet. Currently Melina Girl topping the market 11-2. Well supported this for the Gavin Cromwell stable. Getterban Calonge is 13-2. Beauport 7-1. Major Dundee 15-2. Fontaine Calonge is 8-1. Galliard de Leteau, City Chief and Percussion at 10-1 and 11-1, and bigger the rest of the field. And Brett, I'll come to you first here. Extra places.
Yeah, 4 places each way in this, which doesn't really make it any easier because there's only 14 runners. But these races are always, you almost want to sort of just close your eyes, get to see where your pin lands. I've narrowed it down to about 4. Major Dundee would probably be my strongest selection. Got the visors on for the first time. Ran a nice race in the Welsh Grand National Trial at Chepstow last time. Of course, that race has since been franked again, or looks even stronger with Salem coming out and scoring in the big one over Christmas. I think also quite significant as well. Jonny Burt was booked on this horse at the 5-day stage. So they've obviously, this has been the plan. I'm not sure if Johnny's been to Barbara Castle and had a sit on Major Dundee, but the fact they wanted to secure a decent big race jockey. For me, that's got to be quite significant. And as I said, the visor first time. King has won this race 3 times before as well. So, plenty of ticks in the right boxes. The other ones, Fountain Collon's probably got a little bit to find. Melina's Girl, obviously, she got some top-notch form, notably when she fell behind Broadway Boy last time, and had been backed as well into 5s from 10. And also the other mare, Gallia de Leteau for the Scoutons, she could be quite well treated here. First handicap off a mark of 142, and of course one novice on this card 12 months ago, so she could be interesting.
Couple that catch the eye there for Brett, but Major Dundee being his main selection, around 15-2 with Unibet. Jonny Pearson, who's you like in the classic?
Unfortunately, it's probably not a good thing that I like 2 that both fell last time. One of them being Melina Girl. He obviously heads the market, travelling as well as anything before falling that day. And, the former Broadway Boy looks rock solid, and provided she's none the worse, she should give a very good account of herself. And the other one is Broken Halo for Paul Nicholls. It was going very well before. Wasn't really a fall, just sort of slipped on landing almost at 2 out at Sandown. And I thought he was coming there to win his race, and at 12-1 with 4 places each way, I think I'm very much going to be playing the pair of those in the each way market.
Melina Girl and Broken Halo, Broken Halo, a good each way selection there from Jonny. And Keith Melrose, if there was ever in a selection or a race where I want to follow Keith Melrose in other than the Ida, it'd probably be the classic. So who do you fancy here?
Oh yeah, I always have strong opinions on the classic, and they don't tend to come off. This one I've got a bit of a shortlist this year. Major Dundee's been talked about already. I've been a fan of this horse a long time. I wasn't certain he was a Warwick horse, to be honest. He's a Scorpion and he gets a little bit lazy sometimes. But the first time visor is on, Alan King says it's been the plan to him at the Classic Chase, which you can well believe given his record in the race, as Brett mentioned. He was quite high on the shortlist. I would say if you want to leverage the extra places and no more, you can consider Volcano, who has won every race over fences at Warwick that he's running, besides this race last year when he was 5th from about a stone out the weights. Only about £2 out the weights now, so he could outrun his odds at a big price. But the one who I fancy, who I think's price is out, is City Chief, who's got that form behind Broadway Boy and Melina Girl in those races at Cheltenham. Now, this horse is a big galoot. I think he wants a big flatter track than Cheltenham. He just gets, as soon as they hit the downhill run and the last run behind Broadway Boy, he was off the bit. He's just a one-paced oaf. But he's a talented one. His best form is on flat, left-handed tracks like Wetherby in the air. That's where all his best form's been, and now he gets another go on a flat left-handed track. He might need to sharpen up his jumping a little touch, but he's the one whose price looks out to me. I think he should be in with the 7-8-1 shots, and you can back him at double figs.
There we go. City Chief, certainly one to keep an eye on for Keith there. We move on to the final race we're covering from Warwick, which is the 3:35. Great to see this race rescheduled after Sandown's card got abandoned last week. It's the Unibet Veterans Handicap Chase, Class 2 event over 3 miles, and Celebra Dalen and Good Boy Bobby topping the market at 13-2. I Right 15-2. Ramsey Detay is 17-2. Thomas Darby, Sapage and Mill Green are 9-1. Double figures about the rest of them in here. And Brett, we have got extra places, but it's so good to see this race being rescheduled and put on this card at Warwick, isn't it?
Yeah, I know a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes in getting that race restaged. I spoke to Ed Nicholson yesterday, and he, as I said, a lot of planning has gone into getting this race on, and it's great. We've got a very good field assembled for it. 17 runners going to post. We're paying 6 places each way, so you are going to get your value with Unibet. Although where the winner comes from is a little bit more difficult. You've got these sort of, as we said, we get into the veteran stages. There's quite a few of them wearing visors and blinkers and kitchen sinks for the first time. Thomas Darby, obviously, for me, he sort of just about sets the standard. Went over course and distance last time, beating Mill Green, who actually I spoke to Nicky Henderson about an hour ago, and he did sort of say doesn't really think sort of 3 miles on soft ground around Haydock is going to be Mill Green's cup of tea, but he was very sweet, to echo Keith's sentiments. He was very sweet on City Chief. He thinks that the track was suited, the ground was suited. He is quite keen on City Chief. But yeah, I think Thomas Darby, for me, he sets the standard. He holds a lot of these on form. He's beaten likes of Wright and Cepage before. Cepage then came out and won the Unibet Middle Distance Veterans race at Cheltenham, so that form's got quite a strong look to it. Good boy Bobby, obviously you can't rule him out for the banging form. And Nigel Twiston-Davis team, he's got cheap pieces on for the first time. Nestor Park blinkers for the first time. But no, I think I'm going to go with Thomas Darby. Ollie Murphy's horses are in good form, and that gets the nod from me.
Thomas Darby, 9-1 currently with Unibet. Keith Melrose, I come to you next. Who wins the Veterans?
Such a hard race, this. You'll need your 6 places. Looking at this, you're looking at for 6 to 1 the field, and I don't think it's going to get much better than that. It's a very, very difficult race. And it changes the whole complexion of it not being at Sandown, because last week I was absolutely certain Lord and O'Neill had been laid out for that race at Sandown. I talk about strong opinions in the Classic Chase. This time last year, I thought Lord and O'Neill was absolutely the right sort of horse for the Classic Chase, but he didn't really turn up in that race. So, excuse me, I don't feel quite as strong about him as I would have done at Sandown. Similarly, a horse called Boldmure's in here. That horse got a look at the track. Excuse me, for his prep run. And might be a bit of a springer at massive odds, but I think with the track having changed and now being at Warwick, I actually think Mill Green is the one to be with. He gets a good pull at the weights with Thomas Darby for that one last time, and I think, but for a more positive ride from the winner and a couple of mistakes from this horse, he might have beaten. And now he's getting something like a £4 or £5 pull at the weights. So I know maybe Nicky Henderson doesn't like the ground idea or whatever, but absolutely everything else in this horse's favour. He's very unexposed for a horse of his age. And in an exceptionally tough race where, if the price was right, I'd consider half them. Mill Green's the one that I think just now that maybe should be the 11-2 favourite, but that's how open this race is.
There we go, Keith taking a chance on 9-1 selection as well there in the Classic. And Jonny, Pearson, our final race we cover from Warwick. Who are you with?
I think it's a race you can just drop a pen on a piece of paper and try and pick your winner that way. That's what I was thinking. But I mean, I do like, Thomas Darby won there last time. Mill Green's also got form with him, and I think that's the best form on offer, and I think the winner will be one of those too.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this race, like I say, it's so great that this has come on and we get to see these veterans. You are a big fan of the veterans races, Jonny?
I like watching them run, but I'm not sure I like having bets in them over. You've got aging horses which aren't as good as they used to be, and it just takes one to. It may not have been running well for the last 3 starts. Suddenly they turn up again, rediscover some old form, and which is great to see. But it can be quite damaging to the wallet.
I think Keith said he's got a different opinion.
No,
Keith,
I think they're very good punting because these horses so well. There's no second guessing about these horses. I mean, Mill Green's quite a rare example, and he's only had half a dozen starts over fences. Most of these horses, you know exactly what they're all about. I could write 1,000 words on Good Boy Bobby. I could write 1,000 words about every single one of these horses because I've seen so much of them. And then it becomes a lot easier to sort of pick them apart when it comes to punting in these races. So I think they're brilliant punting races, the veterans races myself.
Yeah, no, really looking forward to it. And like I say, with the veterans, you get such good jumps and they're so experienced that you see some excellent jumping on display, and really looking forward to watching that 3:35 at Warwick on Saturday. Now, we're going to be back shortly after this with a quick preview of Kempton and Wetherby.
Want betting on the horses to be anything but flat? With an app that impresses every time out. You're on. Want to watch live streaming of races in the UK, Ireland and around the globe? And get a chance to win even bigger? with 3 Uniboosts every day on any horses you want. Unibet, you're on.
Welcome back to the second part of the Racing Postcast, brought to you by the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. Sam Hart, Keith Melrose, Jonny Pearson and Brett Williams taking you through the ITV action on Saturday. We've covered Warwick, now we're off to Kempton for 3 races there, and the first of which is the 130. It's a handicap chase over 3 miles, and Chianti Classico is currently topping the market with Unibet at 9-4, Phlegmatic 5-2, Latitude is 4-1, Gustavian 11-2, Darasha Counter 13-2, Manila Trump and Maroda at 18-1. This is this week's Super Boost race. Is that right, Brett?
It is indeed, yeah. We are super boosting the price of every single runner in this race from 9 o'clock in the morning. And actually, it's a decent little contest, isn't it? I think you can make a case for quite a few of them. I think Chianti Classico is a potential smart horse. A little bit disappointing. He did win at Ascot last time, but he didn't jump that well. So he's definitely got to brush up on his jumping. But bar a blip in the Albert Bartlett's over hurdles behind Stairway Failure last year, and I think they actually said he suffered from heat exhaustion or something like that. So you can obviously explain the reason for the defeat for that. But he's not looked back since jumping fences, and is clearly quite a progressive sort. He's in open company on this occasion, so he's sort of got to prove his effectiveness against the more experienced horses, notably Phlegmatic, who is obviously going to be a big danger. Has got some good efforts behind some smart sorts, and for me, Phlegmatic, will put it up to the favourite. But I do think that Chianti Classico, is could be, not saying he's going to be a superstar, but I think he could end up, a real top notch for Kim Bailey, who's sort of having a good season so far.
Chianti Classico, yeah, the excellent Harry Cobden aboard. Jonny Pearson, who are you with in the opening race from Kempton?
I'm going to be really the short price favourite, Chianti Classico. I think the fact that David Bass is at Wetherby, they've not messed about in getting Harry Cobden booked on here. The horse, obviously, the form speaks for itself, bar the hurdle blip. Cheltenham, he's won his 5 of his last 6 races. And, okay, it wasn't the biggest winning margin at Ascot, but that's arguably worked in his favour, and the fact that he's only gone up £1 in the weights as a result. And I think, Phlegmatic's been running well, but I think he's once again going to be needing to find a little bit more than he's able to.
Okay, yeah, Chianti Classico, second vote for this horse here. Are you going to make it free, Keith Melrose?
I am not. Chianti Classico, by the way, Nap landed. It was the man with the right accent who was going to pronounce Chianti Classico because it's a fancy Italian wine. So I knew Jonny would get that one right. He has got a lot of breaks in his career, and he could be one of those horses that Kim Bailey turns into a really high-class steering chaser. And Harry Cobden rides Kempton especially well. Big Cobden fan, and I think this is a track where he's especially potent. It's a price thing, and a horse that maybe still has to tell me that he can stand as racing. I'm not going to go in at that price in a race that's very competitive. I'll put in a little word for Maroda, the outsider of the lot, because this horse just wants better ground. I thought, considering that, he went well for a long way. And I think the national course, the day the Beecher was run, is the lowest going stick reading I have ever seen. 2.8 or something. A horse that's finished second in a Whitbread and, won a Grimthorpe, they're not wanting those conditions. And Maroda went well with that considered and might outrun those ginormous odds. But the one I think is the one I put up as my selection is Latitude, who finished last season very progressive, very much needed the run at Cheltenham on his reappearance. Easy to back that day. And then last time at Ludlow, he only got beaten half a length by Tide Times, who's a hound basically, but loves Ludlow. And Latitude set the sort of pace that meant they were finishing about 2 seconds a furlong slower from 4 out compared to the rest of the race. He really did put it in that day and did well to finish as close as he did. So assuming, just a bit more than 3 weeks on, he can come back and come back to his best, I think Latitude's got a right chance in this race. I'll be watching it for Phlegmatic for the old Racing Post Chase at the end of next month, because that was a race he was lined up for last year. But yeah, today, I think it might be Latitude's day.
I've learned a few things there, Keith, with Latitude. I've learned a few things. That Chianti Classico is definitely the one to beat in that field. Maroda may be overpriced at 18-1, and Jonny Pearson is an expert in Italian wine, something that I never knew. But I'll wait to find more about that when I'm next in the office with you, Jonny. Let's move on to the 207, which is an absolute cracker. It's the Grade 2 Silviniaco Conti Chase over 2.5 miles, where Edwardstone and Banbridge are currently 9-4 joint favourites. Pick Dory 5-2. Not long till May, 13-2, and Janadil 12-1. Another race here, Keith, where Unibet can't really split the top of the market with the front three. Who are you going to be with?
We're still talking about these races 4 hours after decks when we're recording this. So, a lot of these markets haven't matured yet. I expect this one to do so. The reason I am not putting up Janadil is because the market could make a complete arse out of me. If it's one of those horses that could go off 25s because or it could. But, I'd be asking why he's the price he is. On form, he shouldn't be. He's only got 1 or 2 runs on which you would mark him down as a rag in this field. Besides those, and looking back even at the spring, his form's second best in this race. So, I'd be looking, if the market speaks positively for him, I would be keeping him on side. But I very much think that Pictori should be favourite. He is just utterly bomb-proof these days, this horse. When he gets his conditions, he gets bounced out, keeps things straightforward. The only time he's lost since the start of last season was to Shishkin in the Ascot Chase. And he's won this race last year as part of what he's been doing. His RPR figures you'll see on there very consistently around the mid 160s. So he's a horse that has to get well placed to win Grade 1s. They did when he won the Merlin Chase in April there. But of Grade 2s, he'll be picking him up for fun. And even though it's a very, very strong race, you've got things to ask about other horses that you don't have to ask about Pictori. He's going to turn up. And Banbridge will need to turn up and improve to beat him. Edwardstone will need to be at least as good as ever and probably better to beat him. I think Pictori should be favourite. Okay,
Pictori currently 5-2 with Unibet. Jonny Pearson, is there going to be some big Ryanair clues in here?
Well, it'll tell us whether Edwardstone's going to go to the Ryanair or not. That's one thing we'll definitely find out. Banbridge won on reappearance last season, so I wouldn't be concerned about him having not had a run since April. And, he's going to go well on the ground. That'll be a big positive for him, and see that they're not sending him over from Ireland just for a bit of fun. They're very much trying to win the race. I was sort of with Keith and Janadil. It's sort of a bit surprising to see him at 14-1 or however big a price he is. I very much thought Not Long Till May would be the outsider of the lot here. For all he's been running well, I think a step up in class is going to be too much for him to cope with. I sort of want Edwardstone's been running well, but it's clearly not the horse he was, when seen winning at Sandown in December 22 now. And if he gets to his best, I can see him winning, but I can't quite bring myself to take a chance on him. And I think he's going to be found wanting a bit more. And ultimately, I've decided I don't know who's going to win, and I'm not going to be having a bet.
I knew that was coming. I was listening to that going, he has no idea who's going to be winning this race. But look, you mentioned there, yourself and Keith have mentioned that Janadil could potentially be slightly overpriced. We have to wait to see how the market matures and whether support comes for that horse. Brett, who are you going to be with in this really good quality Grade 2, I'd say?
That's the thing. I completely agree with Jonny. You can look at each horse and you can make a case. You really can't rule any of them out. In my opinion, this is definitely the race of the day. It's a Grade 1 in all but name. Edwardstone, Banbridge, Pictori, all Grade 1 winners. I agree with Keith with regards to Pictori. He's done nothing wrong. I think a few people are perhaps saying that Paul Nicholls, his horses aren't running that well, or he's not having too many runners, but he always does tend to do that this time of year. But if you look at his stats, he's had 6 winners from his last 27 runners, so it's not a bad strike rate. I think Pictori is the one they've all got to catch. Who knows what would have happened if Shishkin would have started at Ascot, if he would have beaten anyway. So it's a cracking race. Edwardstone, obviously, they're stepping up in trip with him, primarily because he's obviously just not good enough to beat the likes of John Bono over 2 miles. So you've got to try something different. But at the age of 10, as Keith again, to recheck what he said, he's got to almost find something else again, hasn't he? Really. Pictori for me, and a strong fancy for me, Pictori.
Okay, yeah, I really like Pictori as well. Course and distance winner, and like Keith said, really solid, and expect this horse to go off favourite on the day. Let's move on then to one of my favourite handicap hurdles of the year, actually. The 242 at Kempton is the Lanzarote handicap hurdle over 2 mile, 5 furlongs, a Class 2 event, and the betting with Unibet currently looks like this. Impostoir is 100-30 favourite for Nicky Henderson Yard. Sonagino is 5-1. Nemean Lion 13-2. King Alexander 17-2. 11-1 about Mark of Gold up for Parole and Good Luck Charm, and 14-1 and bigger about the rest of the field here. And we do have another extra place race here, don't we, Brett?
We do indeed. 5 places for you in the Lanzarote herd. I love this race. It's always a competitive contest. You know, there's lots of. We've got a few horses that we know how good they are. They're sort of reached their, you know, the top of that handicap mark, and a few horses that are just perhaps sneaking in down at the bottom. Now, I don't tend to do too much look into trends in races like this, but I did just have a quick look this morning, and I think that the first running of this race back in 1978, the winner carried 11 stone 11, a horse called Nougat, which is trained by Josh Clifford. And then since then, you've literally got to be carrying under sort of 11 stone, so you've got to be looking down towards the bottom of the weights for races like this, which does sort of perhaps lean against a little bit Imposed Trois, who's the favourite, got to carry 11.5. But I spoke to Nicky, as I said, about an hour ago, and he always tends to keep his cards quite close to his chest, and he'll try and sit on the fence as much as he can. But I did say, you know, sort of 1, 3, 4, quite a workable mark. He went, yeah, I think that's quite good. So I think that he believes that Imposed Trois, you know, could still have a little bit more to offer. You know, ran a great race behind Lucia last time at Ascot. Although I did say to Nicky, do you think he would have got up and won had he not made a mistake? And he says, no, I don't think so. So I think Lucia was going away, and he would have been beaten anyway. Money Horse, I'll just tell you, Mark of Gold's been quite strong around 12 and 33s. Up for Parole, another horse you touched there on 12 to 1 from 16. And the Nemean Lion's been supported as well for Kelly. I think that could be quite interesting, stepping back up in trip. And I should just give a good mention for Charlie Toddy rides Langadan. Spoke to him about an hour ago, and he says that Scouting's pretty keen on Langadan as well at a big price.
Okay, yeah, laying it down, currently a massive price, I'd say. But Imposed Trois looks a worthy favourite for Nicky Henderson Yard. Keith Melrose, who are you going to be with in the Lanzarote?
Well, of course, that quite like's been mentioned. Again, it wouldn't be my area of particular expertise, but you do get the impression the Mean Lion's the best horse in Kerry Lee's yard, don't you? He gets campaigned like that. He's been entered up for Cheltenham like that, and I watched him in the Great Woods again this morning before I came on here, and he really does travel down that hill. He flattens the second last, he flattens the last, looks a bit one-paced, and still finishes 5th in that race. A really respectable run, arguably a career best. In fact, it is a career best on RPRs. Does look like he's going to suit a bit further than 2 miles. 2.5 at a flat track like Kempton will be pretty good for him. And I just see him running a very big race. You know, if he's going to be anything remotely close to justifying some of the entries he's got, he's going to have to go down close up 140 in this race. And I don't think there's anything against, you know, he's got loads of form at flat tracks. He's won a Grade 2 novice at Kelso, which is certainly flatter than Cheltenham, and he's won the Welsh Champion hurdle. So, yeah, I think there's a lot in his favour, and he looks like one of those really good each way bets again if you're going to take advantage of those extra places.
Yeah, currently 13-2 with Unibet, but I imagine that could shorten all the time for the Kerry Lee stable. That's Nemean Lion and Jonny Pearson. Who's your selection in the Lanzarote going to be?
Keith's pretty much done all my talking for me there, to be honest.
Back it up.
But one that I'd like could run well at a price would be Orcan Risk for Chris Gordon. Obviously won the Betfair Hurdle at Newbury in February, and you know been disappointing since. Ran absolutely no race at Cheltenham over fences last time before being pulled up. It was just £2 higher than when winning at Newbury. I don't know if he struggles to carry heavy weight, so it would be one concern. But I think, you know, if he returns to his form, he should have a very good chance in this race, and that's quite a big price. But again, there is a big question mark there. But at the price, I'm happy to take a chance there. But the Nemean Lion's definitely my main fancy. As Keith said, flat in the last 2 hurdles, and if jumping better and handling the step up and trip like he should, I think he's the one to beat here.
Okay, 3 really good words there for Nemean Lion. But Brett, would that be one of the top selections for yourself as well?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'd like to see him post-trial because I just sort of wanted to heed Nicky's thoughts of the fact that he is quite well weighted. But I've always followed Nemean Lion. I just think the step back up in trip will definitely suit him. And again, what Keith said, you know, you get the feeling Kerry sort of thinks this horse could be quite higher among the ranks in the stables there down in Wales.
Yeah, look, it's an agreed opinion on the Lanzarote. If you were to give me a race today that we weren't going to agree on, it would have been the Lanzarote. But we have. Go on, Brett. You
should just mention, because I've actually bothered to write on a piece of paper that Hermino AA, the Gary Moore horse.
Hermino, yeah,
yeah, it's got some good form over hurdles. Hasn't sort of look like it's like jumping fences, but I think it could be quite interesting stepping back down. Chip and Gary's team are obviously flying at the minute, aren't they?
They absolutely are.
Sam, I heard you snorting when Mark of Gold got mentioned, ridden by Niall Houlihan. He's your pal, so give us chapter and verse on that horse.
He is. No, do you know what? I actually mentioned a good friend of the show, watch the show, George Gorman, who works in the Gary Moore yard. And he told me earlier in the week who would be going for this race out of the more stable, because there were Teddy Blue was also entered. And he said that both Amino and Mark of Gold would go for this race. I was very keen on Mark of Gold at the start of the week. Maybe a bit of half time, but I backed this horse that Brett said 33-1. I thought it was far too big a price. But Hermino is also very interesting in this race, and I will sort of talk about Hermino towards the end of the show, probably giving a bit of a clue away to who the nat might be. But yeah, Mark of Gold, look, they're very keen on this race. They had this race in mind last year. The horse actually fell under Kaelin Quinn, or unseated the ride under Kaelin Quinn last time in this race, and then the horse went on to win straight after that. So they obviously had this horse ready for a race like this, and I think the plan is to go and actually win the race this time around. So we'll just wait and see. But yeah, it's a really fascinating Lanzarote handicap hurdle. We've got one race from Wetherby to quickly discuss, which is the 110 there. This will be the opening race on ITV. It's the Towton Novices Chase Grade 2 contest over 2 mile, 3.5 furlongs. The market currently looks like this. Colonel Harry is the odds-on favourite, 5-4 on currently with Unibet. Trelawn is 3-1. The King of Rye-Hope, 6-1. Chasing Fire, 15-2. And Hurricane Highway, the outsider of the 5, at 18-1. Is this too short a price? Jonny Pearson.
I don't think he is too short a price. I think he will go and win the race. I think he's too good. That form behind the Patron at Sandown is best form on offer. Obviously, with Trelawn was behind Ginny's Destiny in the race that Grey Dawning was in last time. I think Trelawn was arguably slightly flattered with both Grey Dawning and Creverley taking half the fences on the way around, and I think probably would have finished fourth if they both jumped, halfway well. But yeah, Colonel Harry, best form in the race, and should go and win. Really, there's not too much to say.
One vote for the favourite, then Keith Melrose, a second vote.
Oh, I should point out that Jonny, you've introduced him as Irish handicap, but he also handicaps the Novice Chasers, don't you, Jonny?
I didn't handicap the Sandown race.
You didn't handicap the Sandown race, but you do. You are generally responsible for these RPRs in this race we're looking at. And sensibly, I was going to praise you there, Jonny, but you've talked yourself out of a bit of praise, because I said sensibly they've rated that Sandown race fairly low than the Patron race, the Henry VIII. I think as Grade 1s goes, that form's muck, quite frankly. And I think there's a case for saying that form with Ginny's Destiny, that race is a stronger race than the Henry VIII, even though it's not even a graded race of any sort. Trelawn, if this race, the Towton's used to be a 3 mile race, it's been brought back to 2.5 to replace, sort of half replace the Dipper. And if it was still a 3 mile race, Trelawn would be better the day by streets. It's a stayer, this horse. And I thought he was, as soon as they hit the downhill run at Cheltenham last time, he was behind the bridle. But he too missed the last. He bunny hops the last, does Trelawn, in that race. Otherwise, he would have finished even closer. Yes, the second and the fourth did make horrible mistakes of their own, and Ginny's Destiny's jumping one of it. But Trelawn was very much worth his place in among those good horses at a trip which will be short of his optimum. Could end up being a really good 3 miler, this horse, and as I say, an old touted on a bit all over him. I noticed that David Bass, obviously we've mentioned that David Bass is not riding at Kempton or Warwick, he's riding here. So he's come for, and he's not got any other big rides on the card that you would certainly pick out that would certainly move him away from premier cars at Warwick and Kempton. So that's a little bit of a clue for you. As I say, I do think Trelawn's a 3 miler in time. However, I just think in this race where you've got a favourite who's got the Grade 1 form, which isn't really Grade 1 form, it opens that gap for a big price to take him on here and for him being too short. So I think Trelawn's quite a good bet in the race.
Okay, yeah, like Keith says there, we mentioned it earlier as well, Kempton stable jockey David Bass taking the ride here for Kim Bailey, and this could be quite notable. Trelawn currently 3-1 with Unibet, and Brett Williams finishes off with a winner.
Yeah, it's could prove quite tactical actually, because as Keith said, you've got Trelawn who would arguably be suited by a little bit further, and Colonel Harry, who is a sort of genuine 2.5 mile horse. It wouldn't surprise me to see David Bass go out and sort of try and make all and bring stamina into it and sort of take this thing out of Colonel Harry. But you said that's smart enough form from Sandown last time. I think he's probably the most likely winner. But the fact that David Bass has gone up to there when he could be riding Chianto Classico at Kempton, that could be a tip in itself. It's a shame that Willie Mullins horse doesn't run, because that would have really sort of added intrigue into it, really.
Yeah, it's Meeting of the Waters who isn't running, which is a bit unfortunate. But look, a really interesting race to finish things off here on the Postcast. Now, competition time. How would you like to win 2 tickets to the Cheltenham Festival Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival. Here's how. Welcome back to the final part of the Racing Postcast, brought to you by the Racing Post, sponsored by Unibet. You've still got Sam Hart, Keith Melrose, Jonny Pearson and Brett Williams here, steering you through the weekend action. We get into a few people's favourite segment of the show, the Any Other Weekend Selections part of the show. I know there's a gentleman in the comments last week, Japob, who really loves this section, as we've found plenty of winners in the last few weeks. And there was a lot of praise for you a couple of weeks ago as well, Jonny Pearson, so no pressure here. But we'll start off with Brett. Is there any other selections for this weekend? And also, is there any kind of really exciting content coming from Unibet? Because I'm sure you've got something to tell us.
Yeah, we have. Ed Nicholson went along to see Nicola Boinville at Seven Barrows to talk sort of through sort of his big race successes and the famous silks that he's carried to success. And I think the first part is where he kicks off with those horses ridden to success for Di Walters, the likes of Angel's Breath, of course, who was a real smart novice, and Whisper, and William Henry as well. So yeah, that's a really, really good bit of content coming out shortly. But if you're looking at what we fancy later on, I don't know what price it is. It's probably going to be odds on. But I do like Northern Symphony in the bumper at Warwick on Saturday. I think it's 4:05. Ran very well when second behind us. Very smart horse of Anthony Honeyballs in the junior bumper at Newbury. Wouldn't really need to improve. You wouldn't think to take penny a beating. So yeah, Northern Symphony could be interesting in the finale at Warwick on Saturday.
Northern Symphony, yeah, look out for the price of that one. 4:05 at Warwick on Saturday. I actually want to give a mention to this horse because it's been in my notebook and I need to give a mention. But one other selection for myself would actually be at Maidan. It comes on Friday. But I'm so sorry. But I need to give this horse a mention. It's the 4:25 UK time. No price available yet. But it's the 4-year-old in the fields, Go Soldier Go, who started his career in Maidan with trainer Fazi Abdullah Nas. And he had 2 wins and 3 places from his first 6 starts last season. He then went to Todd Pletcher for a couple of runs out in the US. Things didn't work out there. He ran in grade 3 contests and stayed on really nicely past a few horses, but could never get his head in front. I think the longest straight in Maidan definitely suits his horse. Now back with Fazi Abdullah Nas, and this horse had a really good prep run on turf in the Zabil Turf Handicap, which is often a really strong handicap. Now runs back on the dirt. I think this horse is incredibly well handicapped. And the 4:25 tomorrow, Go Soldier Go. Honestly, I definitely think this horse is worth keeping an eye on, especially throughout this season out in Maidan. Apologies for that. I had to take a trip away from the UK and Irish action. But we also have the Lawlers of Naas as well on Friday. That's been rescheduled. Obviously, last weekend didn't take place, but that's happening this weekend. We'll get Johnny's opinion on that, as well as other selections. Johnny, who else do you like?
The Lawlers of Naas, obviously, it was a shame to be lost last week, but I mean, they ran the chase, and I mean, for all we know, they missed out half the fences because we couldn't see anything. So it's questionable for them to put it one way. But Firefox, obviously, very good form, beating Ballyburn last time. El Atlantique, obviously, second behind Firefox in a bumper back in April. And, you know, the market has it between the two of them. But Tobar, which I think I pronounced wrong, ran well behind Farron Glory, who was given a very good, running very well when falling at Aintree late on last time. And, there's a lot of horses in here who you wouldn't be surprised to see any of them win, really. Croke Park, mentioned earlier. And then you've got the other 2 from Mullins, Lecky Watson, or 3, Chapeau de Soleil and Reading Tommy Wrong, who, none of them done anything wrong, really. So I think the market's probably got it a bit wrong, but I wouldn't be having a bet in the race for all it's exciting. And we'll probably see the favourite for the Ballymore or Albert Bartlett in there after the race is finished. But then at Fairy House on Saturday, there's a couple that have caught my eye, and odd races actually. One's a sort of juvenile hurdle, and I think there's a horse for Joseph O'Brien of his first start over hurdles called Trust Your Instinct for JP McManus. And, it was 2 from 2 before disappointing a little bit at Leopardstown in the summer and hasn't been seen since. I think if winning impressively, if he were to win impressively, he could put himself right in the picture for the Triumph Hurdle come March. So that'll be one I'm definitely keeping my eye on there. And then in the bumper in the last race at Fairyhouse, we've got Charlie Bucket reappearing with a first-time tongue tie for Emmett Mullins in the colours of Paul Byrne. Went off 8-11 favourite on debut before being pulled up. It's obviously guessing they've found an issue, and he's got a tongue tie. Chancero's had a wind up as well, as far as I would be concerned. And I think that could. And then you've got a Gordon Elliott horse, Romeo Coolio, who's very well touted coming out of points, and I think that could be a bumper to really keep an eye on going forwards for the rest of the season and beyond. I don't really have any other selections per se, but there's a lot of good racing a lot of bits to be taken from various races, depending on who we go and see win and how impressively they win.
Plenty of pointers, this weekend. So keep an eye on some of those races from Fairyhouse on Saturday. And Keith Melrose, any other selections elsewhere?
Yeah, potentially in a sort of price based. I'll make them quite quick. In the 3:15 at Kempton, I'll be interested to see how they price up Lila Jurien, who is 11, but he's 4 from 8 since joining Joe Tizard. And won over course and distance really impressively, cut a starts back, and then set a really quite strong gallop at Cheltenham in a middle distance vets race. Didn't quite get home, having set a stiffer track, but back at Kempton, I think he'll be fine. And there's sort of horses in there that might make the market for them, so be looking out for him. The 2:15 at Wetherby, again, horses that you think might end up a little bit shorter or be put in a little bit shorter than they ought to be. And if the prices are right, I might just put Excitations and Mount Tempest in against the field, because I can't see anything outside those two winning unless Ollie Murphy's got Gunsight Ridge fitter than I expect. Above Nap is also running on Saturday away from the telly, but I'll save that for now. I've not even got decks for Sunday, but there's a race at Kelso I just wanted to bring people's attention to. The 150, it's a race at Kelso, so it's one Sandy Thompson targets, but this race particularly, he's had a few that he's even laid out for it in the past. And I noticed he's got Ryan Mania jocked up already on Massini Man. Now this horse last ran here in November. He fell 2 out. I thought he was coming to win the race, to be honest. He was available. He was 7-4-ish on Betfair, having gone off at 100-30. I think he was coming to win the race. Red Happy won the race. He followed up next time. Ned Tanner was second. He's held up the form and been really solid since. Return Fire was coming in off a win. I think he was going to beat them all. And yet he's in off the same mark here. I think they've saved him for the race. So if he gets declared for the 150 at Kelso on Sunday, I'll be very interested in Massini Man.
There we go. A few horses to keep an eye on this weekend, and one on Sunday there from Keith. Right, it's nap time. The moment we give our best bets for the weekend ahead. And I will start off with Jonny Pearson. Who's the best bet this weekend?
For myself, despite what Keith and Brett think, I am going to nap Grey Dawning in the 2:25 at Warwick. I think he's the best horse. I think he's the best horse in the race, and I think he'll win. It's quite simple, really, for me.
Okay, Grey Dawning at Warwick for Jonny. Then Keith Melrose, your nap?
Yeah, so we talked about Gavin Sheehan going to Wetherby, and I don't think he's there for Gunsight Ridge. He's obviously got the favourite for the Towton, but I think he's also going to have another winner later on the card, the 3:25. It's Lord of Kerak, who's got some really good form behind him. He's running races behind Blackjack Magic, behind Giovinco. And then last time at Leicester, he looked like he took it to it a lot better, and he finished second to Happy and Fine. Miles clear the rest. Happy and Fine's obviously gone out and won subsequently at Haydock. And Lord of Kerak just looks like the sort of horse that has got a bit of untapped potential in him. This, I would say, is definitely a drop in class for him. It's an 120. He's rated 122, so he barely qualifies for the race. And besides Eaton Kalina, who's a really admirable horse, but we know not to be a particularly well handicapped one, and Val Dancer, who's improving from a pretty low level, I don't think this is much of a knot to 120. So the nap is Lord of Kerak in the 3:25 at Wetherby.
3:25 at Wetherby, Lord of Kerak for Keith. I'm going to head to the Lanzarote hurdle, 2:42 at Kempton. I mentioned it earlier. It's not going to be Mark of Gold, but it's going to be Hermino, who, like Brett said when we were previewing the race, this also switched back to hurdles, and I was really impressed by that display at Cheltenham behind White Rhino and Bold Endeavour off the same mark as he was on then. I think this horse will actually eventually make an exciting chaser. I think they will try chasing again with this horse potentially next season, but this horse off 129 in here, I think this horse has a really good chance. And obviously David Noonan riding a Grade 1 winner for Gary Moore back in December on Single Creek Day and the Henry VIII Novices Chase wouldn't be put off by the jockey bookings. I do like Mark of Gold. I'm probably going to Dutch the 2, but I think around 16-1. I think Hermino is a really good bet this weekend in the Lanzarote. And Brett Williams, finish us off with your nap.
Yeah, so my nap comes in the 3 o'clock Classic Chase at Warwick, a race where Unibet are paying 4 places each way, and it is horse number 8, Major Dundee, winner of the Midlands Grand National last year for Alan King, who's won this Classic Chase 3 times prior, got the visors on for the first time, could still be a little bit of improvement to come. Quite likely race, could still be reasonably well handicapped off 135. Jonny Burke, a very positive jockey booking. So Major Dundee to give Alan King the Master, Barbary Castle a winner in the Classic Chase at Warwick.
Major Dundee, that's in the 3 o'clock there at Warwick on Saturdays. There are our weekend naps, and they are boosted from the time of upload. So you can get those boosted on the Unibet website. Head to unibet.co.uk and you can get those naps boosted there. Right, just quickly before we go, what's everyone up to this weekend? Brett, are you at a track? What's going on? Are you going to be at Warwick?
I am going to be at Warwick, yeah. Looking forward to a good card there. The Unibet Veterans Chase, of course, taking centre stage. We're not worried about the Classic Chase or anything else. It's the Veterans Chase. That's the highlight of the day. So, yeah. And literally, Warwick is 10 minutes from me. So, no, not so far to go or far to come home.
Ideal. So you can find Brett at Warwick this weekend. Jonny Pearson, what are your plans?
I'm going to be off to Stamford Bridge to watch the mighty Fulham take on Chelsea and hopefully come away victorious.
Okay, well, you're off to the football. I mean, it's to be fair, it was a rough fixture for you last night, but you can go to Chelsea and hopefully get a victory there. I mean, they're also in a struggling period, so let's hope you get a victory at Stamford Bridge. And Keith Melrose, what are your plans this weekend?
You always seem to catch me on my worst weekends here because I think my most exciting, I might be planing a door. That might be the most exciting thing I'm doing this weekend. So we try to fit a lot of the racing in between.
I'm going to be sat down watching the racing this weekend on the sofa, feet up, with a cup of coffee in hand. Probably that's as relaxed as my weekend gets. So there we go. As always, do like, comment, share and subscribe. Put down in the comments your naps for the weekend. Let us know what you think about the show. I do read them every week. We're going to be back again, same time, same place, next Thursday, 7 p.m. here on the Racing Post YouTube channel. But for myself, Keith, Jonny and Brett, it's a goodbye from us.